Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Astrophotography podcast. Today is going to be an amazing show. I have a fantastic guest with me, a good buddy of mine, Shawn Nielsen. Shawn is a Canadian astrophotographer. He runs a website called VisibleDark, so you can go to visibledark.ca, check out his stuff. He is also a PixInsight instructor. So if you're looking for that refinement of your images, you want to know how to start off in PixInsight, Shawn is your guy, and all of his information is available at his website. So Shawn, I'm not going to delay this anymore. Welcome to the Astrophotography.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Welcome to the Astrophotography podcast. I got my words all jumbled up there. After 45-ish episodes, you think I'd get it right by now?
Yeah, no doubt, eh?
Yeah. How are you? Thank you for joining this morning.
I'm good. I'm doing great, actually. I really appreciate you asking me to come on the show and participate, and looking forward to a fantastic talk.
Yeah. No, this is good. We're going to be talking shop, right? So this is going to be fun, right? Fun for me. I'm sure it'll be fun for you.
Yeah.
We've got some amazing pictures in the background there, of your office. Did you take those? I'm assuming you did.
Yeah. Those. Yeah. No, they're other people's.
Okay.
No, no, I'm joking. No, those are pictures that I took and I had printed and just hung up on the wall. And that I was just testing different manufacturers for printing of the images and that, and so I ended up with a few of them, and I thought I'd put them up and display them, and have something to show instead of it always just being on the computer, not being seen really. So
yeah, I really like the dark shark that you have behind you there. It's one of those.
Yeah.
To me, it's a mythical object, right? It's like we can't see it, but it's there, right?
Yeah.
And it's got so many cool
it's
colors.
a tough one. It's a tough one. I hunted that object for about 5 years trying to get good enough data on it, and it didn't actually happen until I ended up with the Starfield 8-inch scope and the Nexus reducer, bringing it down to f3. Then I took some data using that setup, and I ended up with that image that you're looking at there.
You bring that up. I wasn't actually going to ask about that scope, but now I have to ask because it just something came into my mind.
Yeah.
That combination using an 8-inch f4 astrograph and then putting the Nexus reducer. If you haven't heard of the Nexus reducer, the reducer is from Starzona. So you'll take an f4 Newtonian, right, and drop it down to f3, right? But it's pretty sensitive when it comes to spacing, right? Is that? I think you struggle with that.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact spacing on it, but it was very there. It was a very narrow margin that you had to work within. Once you get it, it's fantastic. Yeah, and it's not really, not to make it sound like it's difficult to achieve. It isn't. It's just you want to just try and use those spacers and whatnot to make the adjustments, the fine adjustments that you might have to get the actual spacing that's needed. But it works really. It's a fantastic piece of glass. I really like that Nexus reducer. It works really amazing, especially
it's really interesting because you take that. You take an an f4 Newtonian, 8-inch, 10-inch, 12, right?
Yeah.
You stick that on there, right? You're at f3, which is incredibly fast.
It's like 600 millimeters on the 8-inch, if I'm not mistaken.
And having a large aperture, so you're collecting a whole lot of light.
Yeah, I got better results, in my opinion, anyways, looking at the data that I collected using the 8-inch scope, the reflector with the Nexus reducer. I got better data than I did using refractors that cost twice as much or more even, in my opinion.
Do you think it's because of having a larger aperture, you're collecting more light, you're resolving better?
You're collecting more light for the same amount of time. I put in the same amount of time on the images. 20 hours, 30 hours isn't unusual for me in terms of imaging with refractors and that, but I did the same with the reflector, and I just achieved some phenomenal data with it. It was just so awesome to work with and easy to work with.
Yeah,
compared to the refractor data.
Yeah, it's pretty neat because at f3 you're getting down into like RASA territory, right?
Yeah. You're not that far off from it.
Territory, right?
Yeah.
And Hyperstar, if you have an SCT, that can accept a hyperstar, right?
Yep.
Hyperstar is going to cost you $1,500 to $2,000. I'm thinking Canadian dollars for everyone else. It's like $2,000. That's insane. No, that's realistic for us. And then the SCT on top of that, right? So yeah, you're talking a massive investment. But if you already have a Newtonian and you drop that in there, that nexus,
that's gonna bring you down into that territory and give you some really fantastic abilities when it comes to astrophotography. And I just think a lot of people shy away. Refractors seem to be really popular, and everyone, it's like a go-to. Everyone wants a refractor, but they're easier to use in some regards. You know, the collimation and whatnot. You don't have to worry about that so much. But reflectors, you know, I started out with a reflector.
Tell us how you got into the hobby, right? Because you've been in it for a while.
Yeah, well, I've really been in it since I was a teenager, actually. I just stepped away from it for a while, became more of an armchair astronomer for a while. But when I was a teenager, I actually built my own telescopes, buying the parts that I needed and importing parts from the States and whatnot. I don't know if you remember the Bigfoot mount from Tucson, Arizona. I can't remember who made it, but
I think you have a few years on me. So
okay.
No, I know what the mount is. I've seen it, and it does look like a Bigfoot.
I brought one of those in for a 14.5-inch reflector that I built, and I was doing my own astrophotography back when I was a teenager, mostly lunar and planetary, but I did take some images of M31 and stuff like that. They weren't great. This is back in the day when, you know, we didn't have the technology that we've got today, the digital technology that we have and the cameras we've got today. It was quite different. And in fact, I used, I can't remember what the name of the film was, a TechPan 2450 or something like that. It was hypersensitized film. And I loaded it into a Jack Newton cold camera, if you remember those.
Yep, I know they are. But
so you had to pack them with dry ice.
Yeah,
and you loaded the film in and closed it up and put it on the telescope, and then you guided looking through at least I did at the time. I was guiding manually. There was no auto guiding or anything like that, like we got today with PhD2 or anything. So you're manually guiding, looking through an illuminated rectangle and you got a little joystick, and you're just trying to keep that star centered, basically. And you got to do that for as long as you're going to take your images.
Yeah. If for those who are listening or watching, film is an older technology that was around it's been around for over 100 years. And it's a plastic film, right? With some chemicals on it, an emulsion, and it would be sensitive to the light. I'm just being a bit of a little silly, but
you never know. You never know who's watching.
I think now, you know, we can think even the past 10 years, just the change in technology alone, and it doing a DSO image, how much has changed, right? Just from the older CCDs, right? And mount technology and guiding then, right? To what it is now, where you, you know, I hope to have him on the program one day. Jassim from StellarMate, you know, he created an AI model, right, for StellarMate called Stella, and I think it's like you literally type in, I want to image this and this many exposures and LRGB, and when the object is so many degrees above the horizon, and go.
Yeah,
and it does it, right? And if you have all the automated equipment, if you have the dome, if you have the automated flip flat, right? If focuser, it'll even align itself, right?
Yeah.
So
really,
how did we live? I don't know how you did it before.
It wasn't at the time. There was nothing to compare it to, right? Like you couldn't make the comparison because the technology didn't exist. When I first got into astrophotography and astronomy, I remember buying a book that was called Microcomputer Control of Telescopes, and it had little snippets of code that you could copy and make your own little program to try and control your telescope and stuff like that. But I never really got anywhere with it, unfortunately. But it was in its infancy at that point. All the technology that we see today that people are making use of, and I think I like the fact that I came from that era because it gave me an opportunity to learn the hobby from a different perspective, and then moving forward with the new technology just makes things so much easier and results so much better.
Would you call it an appreciation of coming from that to this and understanding?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was a good learning foundation to start with, in such an old fashioned way of taking images and stuff. But just being able to carry forward, that knowledge and bring it up to date now with things as we have.
I think of it like using a computer with Windows.
Yeah.
But knowing how to use DOS.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And when things really go sideways and you open that command prompt to fix it, right? Because, right? It similar thing.
Yeah, very much.
It's amazing how technology has changed, and the things that are coming out to push things forward. It's exciting.
It's accelerated quite rapidly in the last few years. Just incredible what's going on. Like it's just exploding.
Well, I talked about this with the guys from Pegasus briefly, and I don't want to, at the risk of repeating myself, but we're on the subject. It's like you look at CMOS cameras.
Yeah.
Right. So 8 years ago, right? 7 years ago, right? CCDs were still a thing. Yeah. Well, they still are, right? But
they still are.
Yeah. Right. But a CCD in an S-Big 8300 was the camera.
Yeah.
Right. It was because it was an affordable camera.
Yep.
Give you good results. You can get it in color or mono. Right. It was compact. It was easy to use. But you were also taking like 5, 10, 15-minute exposures as well, because that was a technology. Maybe not that long with that camera, but you get the idea. In that 4/3 format. And then CMOS camera manufacturers that were really big on the planetary cameras, right, with these small sensors, all of a sudden, bam, right? There's a Panasonic sensor, the 1600, right? Which you had one, right?
I had one. Yep, I did.
I had one.
Yeah.
Right. And was it the best sensor ever? No. It wasn't good.
It was good enough. Yeah.
It was good because we could now do 3-minute exposures, 4-minute exposures, right? It wasn't overly noisy, right? It was easy to process some of that out.
That's right.
Right? Kind of.
The only problem I had with the 1600 was the micro lensing.
That's what I was going to say. But then again, what happened? Technology changed, and that camera is not as, I don't think you can buy one necessarily anymore. Why you'd want to, new off the shelf.
Yeah, I don't know why you'd want to. I still see people using them though, actually.
Yeah, but it's a very capable camera, and some of the images I saw people posting on out there with that camera was just absolutely amazing, because no one had seen it before, and a lot of the requirements to run that camera had changed.
Right.
And then here we are, I think, the IMX 571 based cameras, right? Like the ZWO ASI 2600, the Player One Poseidon, the 268 from QHY, right? There's a few other guys out there using that sensor, and that sensor is just absolutely amazing with what it does. It's built on a lot of those lessons that were learned. And yeah, you're right. What you said before, it is so rapidly changing.
Yeah.
Right. It is. In the past 5 years that I don't want to say the obsolescence is coming more quickly, but there's more stuff coming out at a higher rate.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the stuff that exists is still great. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know about the obsolescence end of it myself. I see the point in that, but a lot of the equipment, a lot of the hardware is still very relevant and can be used and put to good use. So, just because they come out with something new doesn't mean you have to necessarily jump on it. You got tried and true equipment as well that works really well. So
yeah, you don't want to be like me when I go to Starfest or the campground where Starfest is, River Place. Yeah. Every time I show up with new gear, and I get gear. I'm testing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what you want to avoid. If it works, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
Shawn, do you what software do you use? You use PixInsight. What else do you use?
I primarily, just for the astrophotography side of it, I use the Nina for acquisition, and I use PixInsight for processing it. I've looked at other software. I used to use SGP?
Yeah, Sequence Generator Pro.
Yeah, Sequence Generator Pro. Yeah, I used to use that. And that was, I used that for about maybe 2 years or so, and that was really good. Nothing wrong with it. I just didn't like that they moved to the subscription model with it. And so I had looked at Nina, and Nina was nothing like it is now. It was very basic.
Yeah, I remember that.
It wasn't very user-friendly. I didn't think anyways. And it took me a while to get used to it. And in fact, I tried it for a bit, and I didn't like it. And I went back to SGP. And then I decided to give it another try, and really stuck with it. Really stuck with Nina. Made an effort to understand how to get it to work. Just things that what I found was back in the day there with Nina, when it was first coming out, when it was being developed, things you could do in SGP were really easy to do, but things in Nina weren't necessarily that easy. So it made it difficult to learn and use. But once you figured it out, once you understood it a little bit, it wasn't so bad. And I got used to it, and I started to really like it, actually. So I followed along with the project as they came out with new versions and whatnot. And we're at version 3 now, I think, for Nina.
3 or 3.1.
3 point something. Yeah, it's 3 point something. But I'm not sure. I haven't opened it up lately. But I mean, like the amount of work that's going into Nina is just phenomenal. And like they have a donation page too that you can donate to the project to help keep it alive. And I have made donations to it because these guys are doing all this work for free, and the capabilities of the software are just incredible.
Yeah, I spoke with Dale Gent. He was a guest on the show a couple of years ago now, and I remember asking him like how people can get involved if they can't program, right? Like myself, I can't code as much as I like to. I use ChatGPT to write my code, and there
you go.
Hey, it works.
It works.
And one thing he said, like if you wanted to contribute to the project in some way, like there's manuals that have to be translated, there's documentation that has to be updated, there's review of things, testing things out, giving feedback, right? Like like the nightly bill, it's, hey, this isn't working as expected, right? And that's where it helps create that community, I think, of for Nina and astrophotography in general, right? And that, imagers helping other imagers to improve the overall experience. I don't use Nina. I use SGP. Again, going back to what I was saying before, it works. Leave it. We get so many clear, we get few, rephrase this again, right? We get very few good quality, clear nights, especially you live in an urban area, right? That it works, leave it alone, don't touch it, right? Get images, right? If I had another rig I wanted to play with and experiment, then maybe I'd do that. But I use SGP myself because it works well with the hardware that I have.
It'd be interesting to go back to SGP for me to go back and try it just to see how it's evolved at this point, because it's been a number of years that I haven't used it, so I have no idea.
I'm not on the latest version. I'm a few revs back.
Okay, all right, because it works and you don't
want works. It works. Yeah. I think the latest version supports Alpaca. I don't use anything with Alpaca, so it doesn't really affect me.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into that exactly either. I have some gear that is capable, but I haven't actually made the effort to figure out how to actually make it work, and I don't want to waste clear nights on it either.
I've played with it a little bit. Right?
Okay.
Then I'm working on something, a little side project for focusing my guide scope remotely. Mm-hmm. And I'm using the Pegasus Astro Focus Cube 3, right? Because it supports Alpaca. It uses a different processor in it. It uses the ESP32 processor, which has Wi-Fi. And they've updated the Unity platform so you can go in, have it scan your home network, get onto it. It gets an IP address. And then in Nina, when I was dropping down my, selecting my focuser, right? Because I was playing with the Nina, it popped up there on the very bottom. So you have your ASCOM selections. On the very bottom, there's the Focus Cube 3 over Wi-Fi, right? Yep. So I selected that. Now it connected to it, which is really, it's nice because now you have devices that are driver free, right? Because the driver, if you will, is baked into the firmware of the device itself. So as long as it conforms to that Alpaca standard, it can then connect across the network or USB, whatever form of communication on that device, and then connect to it. So it's really nice where I can have multiple platforms, right?
Right.
Having devices connected over different platforms.
Connected over.
And I think we're going to start seeing more equipment coming up. Way.
I think you will too. Yeah, definitely. It's I think it's the way that things are going to go, basically, and we're going to see more and more. I've got the Pegasus Ultimate Powerbox version 3, which is also capable in that regard. So I have yet, like I said, I have yet to put this all together and make it work. But how did the focusing work for you with the?
Beautiful. Oh, beautiful.
It worked fine. Yeah, there's no glitches or anything like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of cheated with it a bit. Not cheated, but I was experimenting. I told it to use the guide camera as a main camera, right? And because you're only going to do this once, you're not doing it through the imaging run, right? Hopefully. And I told it to do an autofocusing run using the guide camera. So it moved out so many steps. It did the picture. I got the V curve, right? And so it came into focus, and the stars looked amazing. And I watched it in PhD while it was doing it too, right? So you have the live view going on. And did I do that PhD? No, you can't because PhD afterwards. But when I brought it up in PhD and had it select the star, right? The star, it selected the same star to guide on as before, right? But now the star was much sharper, right? The focus was tighter on it, and my guiding improved, right?
Oh, really?
It was twice as better as before, where I was at a 0.8 arc seconds per pixel, right? Yep. I was down to a 0.354.
354, nice.
Right? And that's with good seeing conditions. If seeing conditions are crap, it's going to be terrible anyways.
Yeah. Do you normally keep your PhD stars focus sharp when you're doing it?
I try. I know there's arguments for both to do it.
Yeah, because I always have mine defocused slightly.
Yeah, it depends because I've even heard putting a red filter on, right, to eliminate the scintillation in the atmosphere. Right? I know people do that. I know people that put an IR pass filter on, so it blocks out everything except for IR. Now you're guiding in the IR, which I'd like to try one day.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah,
see how that works. So if you focus then in the IR, you are slightly out of focus in the visual.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
I'll experiment with it a bit, but my guiding was really good. The main thing was, though, the whole purpose of that little project that I was doing was being able to remotely adjust my guiding, my guide focus. So, having a helical focuser, you go and you touch it and everything's shaking.
Yeah.
And you gotta let it settle down and check. No, it's not good. You tweak it again. No, it's no good. So at least this way it gets better. And then if I wanted to, I could always make it out of focus slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I can do it remotely. And if you're a remote imager, I consider myself a remote imager because my stuff's in the backyard and I'm upstairs. Right? Then I can control it. I can control remotely. Now, if you have equipment on the other side of the world that you have access to, right? That you, if you had stuff in the southern hemisphere, you wanted to be able to control. I think there's some value to that as well, to be able to remotely control your focuser. Now, sure, you can do that with any guide scope. I'm not doing anything out of the box, brand new. It's not like I invented something, miraculous, right? Although I tell my mom I did. You could, if you had just a refractor, you put a focusing motor on there, right? You could do that. But because it's a helical focuser, I did things a little bit differently. 3D printed a holder, did some iterations of it, and so on. But it works.
That's great. That's good. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
I'll share it with the world for $29.95.
$29.95. No, you got to do a subscription model.
Yeah, I'll do a subscription model. Yeah, after then there'll be some terms and of services that you're going to have to.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, all right. So that's something I wanted to bring up too. Terms of service. All right. So for those that are listening and those that are watching, today is, I'm going to look at my calendar. It is the 12th of June. And in the past few weeks, there's been some fury on Twitter and on TikTok. I found out about this on TikTok from graphics designers, users of Photoshop, being presented with the new terms of service. And it's been creating a lot of stir. And Shawn, I thought maybe we talk about this a bit.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
You do some graphic design work.
I do. Yeah,
you do.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So this is really interesting. They updated the terms of service, and there's this one point in there. If you want to look it up, Google this. Adobe terms of service section 4, and they call this section your content. And they've got a lot of backlash on this, and even their stock prices dropped. Whether that's related to this, I'm not 100% sure. You guys can make your own conclusion on that. Google this. There's all kinds of talk on it. But, they've been responding to a lot of this backlash about content and scanning your content. And a lot of people have problems with that. Why do I want Adobe, this big corporation, to be scanning the content that I've created? Right? There's concerns, someone might have an NDA on that, right? It might have some intellectual property, all right? That they don't want necessarily to get out right now. Now Adobe's come back and they've said, we're doing this, and I can understand this point. We're doing this to make sure that there's no questionable material, right? There's, we're trying to protect children from harmful images that might be out there, and so on. Yeah, I get that, and I'm sure they're not the only company that scans for that, and I'm on board with it. But so that's section 4.1, right? And then 4.3 4.1 is content. 4.3 is ownership. Who owns it? Adobe says you own it. But this is where it gets really interesting, and I'll read this out because they haven't been updating their wording on this. So this is section 4.2, the licenses to your content, and this is where people are getting really upset. All right, license to your content solely for the purpose of operating or improving the services and software you grant us, that being Adobe, a non-exclusive, worldwide, royalty-free, sub-licensable license to use, reproduce, publicly display, distribute, modify, create derivative works based on, publicly perform, and translate your content. For example, we may sub-license our right to the content to our service providers or others to allow the services and software to operate as intended, such as enabling you to share your photos with others. Okay, that's an example. I think it could possibly go further than that.
Yeah.
A lot of people are freaked out about this There was a TikTok video that I saw where they could not get past that screen until they accepted it in order to use their software. And to make matters worse, right, if you go and cancel, say, okay, I don't agree with this, right, I'm going to stop using your product, they're charging people to cancel, which I think is wrong as well. So it'll be interesting to hear what other people think. But what are your take on that? Like you mentioned before, but you're not wanting to use SGP because of the subscription model they used.
Yeah, I don't actually use the cloud that much, anyways, Creative Cloud. So I'm not really too worried about it in my situation. But I can see other people's concerns, and definitely it almost, like. You're dealing with copyrighted material in most regards. If there's a person using Photoshop, the artist that's creating that graphic or whatever it is, that is really technically copyrighted content, and I think they're riding a legal line really, really fine in this one. It almost is. It could almost be looked at in terms of like they're stealing your work and your livelihood in some regards,
Well, in the way their wording is I think it kind of protects them from stealing.
Yeah, it does.
Right? Saying, but and you don't have a choice other than to accept the terms.
But yeah,
right?
you don't have. Yeah, they're not giving you a choice. So
and then you're granting them this. Okay, it's non-exclusive, right? So it's not only them that could use it, right? But worldwide, royalty-free, sub-licensable, license to use and produce, publicly display, yada yada yada, right? It's all there, and I think if I create something and it's there, and it gets used in other forms, and there's a benefit to that other party, right? Monetarily, commercially, however,
you should get paid.
You should get paid. I remember there was an interview with Gene Simmons from KISS. And I know he is, you want to talk about marketing and business genius, right? I think he's one of them because he'll monetize anything and make money off of it. And his work, right? The music that they produce, his art, right? He wants to be paid for that work. And he said that, right? That was an interview he did with Dan Rather. And I thought it was a fantastic interview. That one clip, he was talking about rock and roll and music in general. So I see parallels to this because if you spent all that time, the 20 to 30 hours on the Dark Shark that's behind you. Yeah. That was a fantastic image.
Yep.
And you put it out there. Now they take it and they use it in a commercial.
Yeah.
Right. And they use it to sell more Photoshop licenses, but you don't see anything.
You don't get.
I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair.
No, and it isn't. It isn't. It's unfortunate that they're going down this road actually with Photoshop and with the Creative Cloud. But you might see a reverse. You might see something change. I think
you're right.
Backpedaling just because of the uproar that is created, the stir is created too.
Yeah, they've already come out and they've clarified a few points in their terms, so they might change it all around. Never know. Hopefully they reverse their position. I think there was an article I read, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'll say it anyways, that they were going after users of licensed software that was purchased, right? Saying you can't use it anymore. You have to use the subscription-based model. And I think, if you bought the license and you're using it and as such, right, properly, then, that it's a two-way street, right? Like, okay, if I can't use a license anymore, then how are you going to compensate me to get away from it? But exactly. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this works out. It seems kind of sticky. But
it is very sticky. I
know there's a lot of astrophotographers' images out there that use Photoshop in the end to polish up their images, right? Do some enhancements.
Well, you're talking about RC Astro, the blur exterminator, noise exterminator, and
but there's
and gradient exterminator for Photoshop.
And they work really well, right? Now a lot of those tools have come over to PixInsight.
Yep.
right? They work well, right?
Yep.
You have some experience with, I've seen your content, right? And your posts on it. You have some experience with the AI tools that Russell Croman has put out for Blur Exterminator, Star Exterminator. Star Exterminator, that's his too, right?
Star Exterminator, yeah, that's his.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that. It's come out with a couple of iterations. How have you seen it working for you?
I think when it really blew my mind when Blur Exterminator came out and what it was capable of doing and how easy it was to achieve such a better result with the image. The data was there. The possibility of the image being better was there, but the ability to manipulate the data manually in PixInsight, as example, was very lengthy, and it was sometimes the end result was not near as good. So something like Blur Exterminator comes along and takes care of the deconvolution of the image, making it more, bettering the resolution and increasing the sharpness of it, made it really, really easy. And I thought it was just fantastic. In fact, I kind of cursed Russell a little bit because I was going back over old data and I was like just consumed. I was like a madman. I was going through everything I could possibly find and applying this Blur Exterminator to it, this AI tool that was taking care of the deconvolution process, which otherwise, would have been challenging to do, lengthy to do in PixInsight. The same goes with reducing noise. The Noise Exterminator, the AI does an amazing job. You got to be careful with it. It's not foolproof, but I find that if you back off on the settings a little bit and give your images a little bit of grain, they actually look a little more realistic. They don't look necessarily as plastic-like, but yeah.
Almost as if you were using film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, almost. Yeah. But the noise exterminator, again, that was just incredible, and it's evolved with some new revisions and stuff like that. But it has really done an amazing job of streamlining the process for doing noise reduction in PixInsight, and I think it's at this point, I think it's really part of the standard workflow that most people should be using. And there are other tools that you don't have to necessarily pay. Russell's is obviously a paid option, but like Gradient Exterminator there, Graxpert, I should say, they came out with their own AI model for denoising. And it doesn't cost anything; it's free, and it works actually really well too. It had a recent update, and that recent update actually improved its capabilities quite a bit. And I saw a comparison when I was doing it initially with it when it first came out. When Graxpert came out with their denoise, I did a comparison with the Noise Exterminator from Russell, and I was sort of feeling, in my opinion, I was getting a better result, more consistent result with Blur or with the Noise Exterminator than I was with the Graxpert. But now that Graxpert has updated their model, their AI model, to the latest version, which I don't know what it is offhand, but I think last time I saw it we were at 302 in version 302 and AI version 2, if I'm not mistaken, or 201. But the update now has really brought it on par with the paid options that are available for doing noise reduction.
So I don't use here's a big admission. I have the equipment and I take the data, and that's pretty much where it goes from there. I don't do a lot with it. But time and knowledge are the two areas that I lack in imaging sometimes. But I can process, right, the old way, right, and I still do, but I haven't played with the new tools. So let me ask you this: for someone who downloads Graxpert or Noise Exterminator or any of these AI tools, would you say that you load up the module. It's there. It's floating on your workspace in PixInsight. Is it a simple click of the button and you go, or is it still some playing that you have to do? Or the default settings are pretty good.
There is settings. There is options that you can adjust in it that will affect the image differently. In some cases, it'll affect the stars only, as example, or it will affect just the nebulosity side that's in the image. So you got options, and you got option sliders for controlling how much strength is used in those options, how much is applied, and but it ultimately is the default settings. You can get away with using the default settings to some degree. They work really well, and you could really just drag and drop onto your image and let it do its job and walk away with something that's really fantastic. What I'd like to see, though, and I mentioned this to Russell, is I'd like to see an AI tool come out that is capable of looking at all of your raw data, all of your subframes, and analyzing them for star quality, roundness, basically, so that I don't have to use something like Blink in PixInsight and go through them manually one by one by one.
Okay.
An AI tool that could actually analyze that data and delete out, remove the bad frames, bad subframes. That would be really, really amazing, I think. Whether or not that'll happen, I don't know. But if there's anyone out there that's listening to this podcast,
that's what I was going to say. I think, Shawn, you just threw down the challenge, right?
Yeah.
To anyone out there that has the resources, the capability to know how to program such a module, right, to put it out there. Hey, this could be a race, right? It could be the first person out there.
For me, I started having mount issues, and basically it wasn't exactly every 3 or 4 subframes, but it was sort of around that, where it would just it was no good. The frame was bad, and I do short exposure. I do 1 minute shots, and so I end up with like 1,000 images, and I have to go through them one by one with Blink and delete out the ones that are no good and stuff. And that gets really tedious and time consuming. So I had thought about this. I thought, well, isn't the AI capable of analyzing this data and saying, with some controls, it would be nice to have some controls, but basically look at the data for stars that are round and stars that aren't round and chuck out the ones that aren't any good. So I had proposed that to Russell and that, and he wasn't really keen at the time, but things change. That goes back about maybe 6 or 8 months ago now. So who knows?
What should we call it? Blink Exterminator?
Blink Exterminator. That would be awesome.
That would be great. Okay, I
would definitely. You know what? That is one thing I would pay for if someone came out with an AI tool that was capable of analyzing the subframes for me like that and deleting the bad ones. I would pay for that easily.
But not on a subscription basis.
Not on a subscription model.
Okay, Shawn. Here's a question I've been asking everyone. You are stranded on a desert island with the equipment of your choice. Okay. But you can only image, and you can process this too, right? Afterwards, you can only image one object. And that's it. Until you're rescued.
Until I'm rescued. Wow. Yep. There's no beer involved here. There's no.
Sure. The only restriction here is the object. We can have the kegerator going. Right. There could be like beer supply drops. No
beer
problem.
Supply drops, bikinis, anything like that.
Beer supply drops. We're this is the Canadian side of you, right? Thinking of the beer right away. What is that object?
What is that object? Wow,
and is it going to be one-shot color or mono?
No, it would definitely be mono. It would have to be mono. I prefer monochrome images over one-shot color images. I like the data a lot better. I think the data's the quality of the data is better when you're shooting full sensor of each channel and then combining them rather than the way that the one-shot colors work. But what would that object be? Geez, that's a really good question. It's really difficult to say because I think it would have to be something that is very unusual, something that I would not have normally. If I'm stranded on a remote island somewhere, I would assume I'd have access to other objects that I probably haven't been able to image before. No?
Nope. Nope. Well,
okay.
Anything that you've imaged before, right?
Yeah.
A favorite object, one. Yeah, but
what would I do again? Geez, I don't know. See, and I don't want to say the typical stuff, because people there's go-to objects like, M31 and M42 and M45, stuff like that. But I would probably go for more. I would actually probably be interested in re-imaging the dark shark or something like that myself. Just having the light pollution, not dealing with anything like that when you're on a remote island and stuff, and being able to acquire the best data possible. I think something in a dark nebula anyways would be really fascinating. Yeah, because that's something that's really difficult to shoot. In my situation anyway, suburban, dealing with the light pollution and levels and stuff, when you're going for dark nebula like that, you need a lot of integration time, but you also, the light pollution really interferes with the object, and it requires a phenomenal amount of data to come up with something that even is remotely good, that brings out the details, the fine dust of the dark nebula and whatnot. So brings out the contrast. So yeah, I think I would shoot a dark nebula, but something like the dark shark or something like that would definitely be on the list. I would think.
Okay, that's awesome, Shawn. Thank you for your time today to join us on the Astrophotography podcast. It's a pleasure. Shawn Nielsen, located here in Ontario, Canada. Right, check him out at his website, VisibleDark.ca. If you're looking for tutorials on PixInsight, you want some 101 training, some coaching on PixInsight, if you want to look at some reviews on some equipment, check out Shawn, and he'll be there to help you out and bring you to the next level, teach you those AI tools, and get the absolute most out of the data and the images that you are taking. Shawn, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Steve. Really, really great to be here. I had a great time, and I hope everyone that's listening has clear skies and good images.
Absolutely. Clear skies, everybody.